Well, hi there. Thank you so much for coming in today and participating in our candidate interviews for the 2024 election for the Board of Directors. How are you doing today?
Good, good.
Good. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, what neighborhood you live in, and any clubs or groups or positions you've held?
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephen. I appreciate that. I'm Terry Reynolds, and my wife is Susan Reynolds. We have a little puppy dog named Toto. And if you live in Redbud, you've seen us walking around. So we live just not too far down from the dog park, and we go down there every day. We've really enjoyed living here. It's been a great experience for us. We've lived in Fort Bend County since 1987, so we've been here for a long time. I came here via employment with Fluor. We were previously down in Corpus Christi and moved up here for a job. And at the time, never thought we'd settle down here, but we did. We did, and we've been here ever since, other than we did one 3-year stint where we moved to Australia, but then came back. There's nowhere else in the world like being in Sugarland and now Richmond, and we certainly enjoyed being here. I guess one of my main involvements here since we've been in Sweetgrass has been neighborhood representative for Redbud. And we did that for 2 years. We did our part, and then we turned it over to some other people. That was a good experience for me, getting to know a lot of folks in the neighborhood because we moved here in 21, right after COVID. And so people were just coming back out. They'd been locked up in their homes so much. And so we had a good time with that. We had a lot of parties. We had a lot of street parties. We did several neighborhood events up here at the club and got a lot of people back involved, I think, because folks were just coming out of their shell from COVID.
All right. Well, thank you for that. What do you say we dive right into these questions?
Let's get it.
Okay. Question number 1. What motivated you to run for the HOA board?
Well, that's somewhat protracted, I guess. I ran before back in 21, and we'd only been here for, I guess, maybe like 5 or 6 months at the time, I think. I can't remember exactly. And unfortunately wasn't successful in that. I believe if you're going to live in a community, you need to get involved and you need to do your part and share what your base experiences and what your strengths are with the community. And so having been involved with an HOA before in Sugarland, I was a neighborhood representative for roughly 14 years, I think, and 3 years as a board of director there, and 3 years directing the Parks and Recreation Committee and redefining redeveloping maybe is a better word, the neighborhood parks there, several of them, 7 major parks there and within the community. And that experience taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about dealing with the public, about dealing with the local government, about dealing with the city government, and about trying to get things done within an organization that was, more or less a government organization in a way, you might say, because you are elected and you are serving members. And that's a lot different from working within a company where you're the boss and you tell everybody what to do, right? So my point in running with the board was to try to bring that experience that I gained from working within that organization to this one.
Thank you. All right, next question. What experience do you have that you believe will benefit our community?
Well, as I say, I just have previous experience working within a very large homeowners association for a long period of time and developing that pretty much from scratch. And I think, we kind of did that coming here because of the COVID shutdown and everything. And when we came in was just really restarting the neighborhood associations when we got here because nobody wanted to stick their head out the door, right? So I think I did bring that to the table with being the neighborhood representative and helped our community get reestablished and really saying hi to one another, walking down the street, going in each other's houses, having parties, getting together for social events up here, all those critical, important things, and then making sure everyone was connected as much as we could. Not everybody wants to participate, and you have to realize that, which is their prerogative. If they don't want to be a part of it, they don't have to. But getting people on the emails, getting the forms put together so people could vote and express their opinion and collect that, provide feedback to our little Redbud community, and keeping everybody aware of what was going on.
Thank you. Next question. How familiar are you with the current bylaws, rules, and regulations of our HOA?
I sit down every night and read it and go through it all in great detail. I'm kidding. Just kidding. No, I have read through all of it. Been through it several times, especially before when I ran for the board. I got to go back and renew that because there's been some changes since then. I'm sure that was 3 years ago now, I suppose. And bring myself back up to speed with all of it. But as far as the mechanics of running an association, I'm very familiar with that.
All right. How much time are you able to commit to your role as an HOA board member?
As much as my granddaughter will let me. We have well, she's not brand new. I shouldn't say that. That's the story. But she's almost 2 years old. So we spend a lot of our time with our granddaughter. I do have a small business. I run that, a consulting group, and that does take some of my time. I don't have 40 hours a week to devote to this. I can tell you, that's not possible. And I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody is a full-time working on the board here, or maybe there is. Maybe somebody's doing that. But I have the time to, if I commit, I'll make the time to make sure that I meet those obligations and that my representation on the board doesn't go lacking.
All right. I feel like you've already touched on this one, but we're going to go ahead and ask it anyway.
Go ahead.
Have you served on an HOA board before? And if so, what was your experience?
Yes, I have served on an HOA board before. It was both very rewarding and very challenging. There were a lot of very strong personalities on the board, and we had numerous conflicts on the board that had to be resolved, and not everyone shares the same experience level. Not everyone has the same background. Not everyone is there for the overall effort of what's going on. They bring their own tools with them, as I like to call it, and they're there to do their thing, whether that's be a carpenter or a plumber or electrician or whatever, a banker. And that's what they want to do, and they don't want to do anything else. So if you let them do that, they're fine. Leave them in their little toy box and they're good. But when you start trying to bring them out to where you got to solve covenant issues, that was always one of the great big things that we would have trouble with. What do you do about the bylaws? And somebody says, blah, 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 but I want to do blah, 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 this practice, that practice, this covenant, that covenant. How do you resolve those things? When somebody wants to put a 40-foot flame tower in their backyard, on top of about a 30-foot column. Now that's a good one. That's something that, will just, yeah. You got to do a lot of soul searching on that. But, bringing the board together and getting people to work together is always a challenge. Making sure that you respectfully deal with members when they come before you, because really the truth of it is you work for them. They elected you. They put you in office. Don't all of a sudden think that you're the boss of everybody. And that's a problem with people sometimes. They lose track of that. They think I'm in charge now. You got to listen. I do what I want to do. You got to listen to what I'm doing. That's always a challenge. It was a challenge then. It'll be a challenge now because people are people, personalities being what they are. And you're not going to fix them in 5 minutes, especially with the folks here, because we're all senior citizens. We're set in our ways. We don't want anybody telling us what to do or how to do it or what color shirt we can wear, whether or not we can wear flip-flops walking through the city, the center here. They don't want to hear that. They want to do their thing and they just want to be left in peace. So.
Thank you. All right, next question. How would you ensure that your actions as a board member are aligned with the overall needs of our community rather than pursuing a specific personal agenda or goal, or the goal of a particular club or group?
There's a common thematic element in this. I think we all understand that. Again, you're dealing with people. How do you get people to do what you want them to do? You can't. unless you're an overlord and you're going to, call on your army to come beat people into submission. You can't do that. But generally, people are understanding. And if you treat them with respect and you listen diligently to what they have to say, and then answer the questions that they've asked you. And at times, if you can't answer the question that moment, tell them. Don't make up something. Don't say, I don't care what you think. I'm not here to listen to you. Don't say things like that. People do that. And it's very condescending and it's very hurtful to folks, but you can't do that. That's not your position being there on the board. You're supposed to listen to what people bring to the board, understand what they have said, take that away if you have to, because it requires some other venue to resolve, and then come back to them quickly. Never wait 3 months to come back and answer somebody. Always answer them as quickly as you can. And just remember that everybody's issue they bring is the most important thing to them.
Next question. How do you approach conflict resolution, especially when dealing with disagreements among residents or board members?
This is thematic. I've been in corporate America for 40 years, and I've probably been to every training class there is. Well, maybe not, but many training classes on conflict resolution, how to deal with it. I remember taking a class when I first came up here with Floor called aggressive listening. And that was one of the most arbitrary titles I'd ever seen any training session labeled, and turned out to be one that was very good. I really enjoyed it. How do you listen to somebody when they're yelling and screaming at you, right? How do you listen to somebody when they're crying? How do you listen to somebody when they're very emotional and it's very close to their heart? My child died, my whatever, my dog died. How do you listen to somebody about that? How do you provide that empathy that they're looking for without being drawn into it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very easy to do that, especially when you're listening to someone tell you something very personal that's very traumatic to them. I think that probably the things that I have seen here has been people coming to the meetings and they have a specific purpose for being there, and that is to communicate to you in a very different ways. Some of those are very shy and others are very outspoken. Some are very calm. Others are very emotional and very excited. And learning to deal with each one of them with the same respect, the same diligence, and the same understanding, and trying to make sure that what they are communicating comes across properly to you and to the other board members that are with you after the meeting when you're discussing it. If it's between board members and it's in a private meeting, you're outside of there, how do you deal with that yelling and screaming and my way or the highway and the rest of that? I have found civility as something that's severely lacking in our society today. And it's definitely alive in every meeting that I've been in recently. So maintaining your posture and keeping your cool and not getting drug into it is probably the best thing to do.
All right, wonderful. Why don't we go ahead and dive into the next question? What role do you see yourself playing on the board?
Well, listening yesterday to the different positions that are on the board, the president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and then member at large roles. So I've served in all of those. So I would say being the secretary is not the most fun role. It's the most active role, I would say, because you're responsible for taking all the notes and everything else. I'm not really interested in that. I hate to say that, but I'm not really interested in that. My handwriting being one, no one can read it except for me, which is, always turns out to be a problem when someone's trying to decipher what you wrote down. But I've had many businesses. I've been in many different roles on boards and within organizations. So I'm very familiar with all of it. So I would be open, to whatever we decide is the best role for my background and experience.
All right. Next question. How would you handle a situation where a board decision you supported was unpopular with a significant portion of the community?
Mm. You know, not everybody likes everything that's done. Everybody wants to keep the fees low. Everybody wants to have tulips planted every Tuesday. You know, everybody wants to see the grass cut every Monday morning, and they want to have all their pet peeve projects added to the current slate of projects for the organization. So getting all of those things done and pleasing everybody is always a hard thing. But most people understand when you explain it to them sincerely why things can't be the way they want it. You know, they want to have the building painted purple, and purple is the color it should be. And why doesn't everybody else want it to be purple? Why doesn't everybody else want to let the grass grow and all the weeds grow and make it look more au natural? Working through those issues and helping people try to understand that is always a challenge. It's always a challenge. It would be to me if I came up here with something and I said, you know, Redbud community back there doesn't get flowers planted regularly like it should. We don't have this, we don't have that. Our deal's falling apart, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I understand that can't be done right now. Everything has to be programmed. Everything has to be budgeted. Everything has to be part of whatever the next fiscal year's planning. You have to put all these things in. The machine moves slowly at times. Doesn't always move as quickly as we want to.
Thank you. Next question. What do you believe is the most important role of an HOA board?
This has really got a string of connected points, doesn't it? Well, you know, the reason for having an HAO board is very basic. You know, the first rule is making sure you are fiscally responsible, making sure that all of the things that the board has said it's going to do, everything that's in the next year's plan is taken care of and done. And if it isn't done, for whatever the reason, you need to feed that back to the community. Everybody's concerned about that. They don't want to hear you say one thing and do something else. Making sure that the cash flow happens regularly, that the dues are collected and that the bills are paid. Nobody wants to go down to the hamburger joint and hear Jim in there say, hey, I've been cutting the grass out there for the last 8 months and y'all haven't paid me anything. Nobody wants to hear that, right? You don't want to hear somebody come from Shearwater and say, well, you know what? Our trees are all dead and all they did was pull them up and put grass back where the trees were. Nobody wants to hear that, right? Making sure that you work through those things, making sure that it's clear and the concise communication has been given to the community is paramount.
Thank you. Next question. How do you prioritize the needs of the community when resources are limited?
Follow-on question. Okay, so budgeting is everything. Everybody understands that, right? Everybody understands because we all have a budget. Everybody does. Well, maybe not you, Stephen. No, pretty much everybody does because we're all working off of limited amount of income at these times of the year, you know, or this time of our life, excuse me. We have a planned schedule of annuities and everything else that are paying us. We have, hopefully some of us get Social Security, all of their, should probably cut that out, it sounds like, if they can. And we're dealing with those things and rising costs, you know, so we all have to learn how to budget. We all have to be there. We have a fixed number of houses in here. We have a fixed number of assessments that are done. We have a fixed number of payments that are going to come in. We know what they are. We know when they're due. We know when we have to make them, right? So making sure that all of these things happen appropriately and in their proper time is the purpose of the organization. The HOA has to be here to keep all of these things running, make sure that all the labor is up here, all you guys get paid, so none of y'all quit, making sure that the electricity bill's paid so we can come up here and enjoy this beautiful building and go in the swimming pool and go and work out and the other things that you might do around here. Keeping the entire organization smoothly running is key and paramount to this organization. The HOA has to do that. If the HOA doesn't do that, then you don't need an HOA. There's no purpose in it. Keeping this place as clean and as nice looking as you can, making sure that we're effectively communicating with the community. That includes the deputy sheriff's office, that includes well, we don't have police here, but deputy sheriff's office, and making sure that they patrol our community, making sure their presence is seen in here. That's a huge deterrent to crime. Just seeing the police drive through here, making sure the community is well lighted, making sure that it's safe here for people to walk down the sidewalk and not trip and fall. You know, you can't stop everything and you can't prevent everything. But as long as you keep things up, as long as you keep them properly maintained, then that's the purpose of the HOA. You got to do that. Making sure that we have the right amount of reserves set off so that we don't have unplanned things happen. And when you do have unplanned things happen, make sure that you have insurances, if possible, to back it up and pay for those things. These are all fiduciary responsibilities that the organization has as a whole, not just the board, but the management company as well. And so the board will give direction to the management company, to you guys, and tell you what we think you ought to do and where you ought to set these limits and what we can afford. Because you can insure everything, but you can't pay for the insurance. That's the problem, right? So you got to get all these things done. You got to make sure the community services all the people that are here. And we have a diverse bunch of folks. I know I come up here and work out and I swim in the pool and I get in the hot tub and the rest of it. And I see the people that come up here, you know, some are, you know, have some mobility issues, some problems, and they have trouble getting in and out of the doors and different things around here, right? Making sure that sidewalks are even and smooth, that there are no trip hazards there. You know, these are all things that we can work with the local community as well as the association and the local government and make sure that these things are taken care of. You won't get everything done and you won't get it done tomorrow. But as long as you have a plan to get it done and not just sitting there doing nothing, that's key to it.
Thank you, Terry. Next question. What experience do you have with budgeting and financial management?
Well, again, I've worked in some very large organizations as well as being a business owner myself. I've done about $100 billion worth of projects during my career all over the world, every continent pretty much, including Australia. I've had my own business. I've been CEO. I've been head of projects. I've been vice president. I've sat in some very lofty titles. I've been on several boards. So I've ran organizations that had billion-dollar budgets. I've ran projects that were as high as $40 billion in contract value. All these things are very dynamic moving objects, which require a lot of different attention, everything from currency hedging to trying to figure out what government's going to be in place next week. So those things all are very impactful to handling an organization. Looking at us here, we're not a billion-dollar organization. We're not a $100 million organization. We're below $10 million organization. Some people think that the smaller the dollar amount, the less attention you have to pay to it. That's not true. The smaller the dollar amount, the larger the attention you have to pay to it. Because if you don't, those things get away from you really fast and you have no recovery. When I'm on a $10 billion project, my I got a problem. I had a brain lock. My contingency account, my contingency account is going to be about 10% of that or maybe less, you know, so you've got, you know, a significant amount of money, you know, close to $100 million that you can play around with if something goes bad. But when you're dealing with a smaller organization, you got maybe $1 million, you know, to cover all of those things that are unanticipated that pop up. So making sure that you have the right budget, the right amount of money set aside, the right financial management practices and procedures and people in place, as well as external consultants, is very key to making sure that you stay on your target. You know, it's very easy to slip off. It's very hard to come back. And where you're sitting here and you're dependent on everybody in the community to be able to cough up money if you need to, that's not a good place to be. So as much as possible, you need to plan for the future. You need to make sure your budget includes items to cover those things. One of the things that we did at the previous association I was in was we had a lot of trees. And they were, unfortunately, when they were planted, they were anticipated 15, 20-year lifespan, which when you're putting it in the ground, that seems like a very long way away. But when it ends up being, the trees have been in the ground now 20 years, what do you do? Because they start dying. So one of the things we tried to do was start our own tree farm. And so we did that. We went out and started our own tree farm, and we planted trees, and they were in a right of way, and they were in the electric right of way, and they let us do that with certain caveats. If they had trouble and they had to dig them up, they had to dig them up, right? But in the meantime, they're just trees, are just growing along the side of a right of way, right? So it's not, no one's hurt. There's no harm there, no foul. And then use those trees to transplant whenever trees died. So you had staggered trees that were all, from 4 to 6 inch, trunks to 8 or 10 inch trunks, which were very expensive, as you guys well know, when you go out and try to procure those and have them put in. And the types of trees that we had in the community. So that worked out really well for us.
Thank you. Next question. How would you balance the need for maintenance and improvements with the financial constraints of the community?
Well, if you don't change the oil in your car and you don't put new tires on your car and you don't keep your brakes up on your car, all maintenance items, right? You're not going anywhere. It's going to die on you. You may want to repaint your car. You may want to put new seats in it. You may want to do all these other things. But if you don't do the core basic things, the core basic maintenance, nothing's going to last. Nothing's going to work for you. And you're going to end up having to replace it. Well, we can't replace this community, right? So maintenance is number one. You have to fund your maintenance. You have to make sure that you're doing it properly. You have to make sure you inspect your roof properly. You have to make sure you inspect the foundation, your plumbing, your electrical, your air conditioning, your flooring, your walls, your doors, your security system. All these things require maintenance, right? And you have to budget that. Typically, people say 3% of whatever the actual value of the item is. So this clubhouse costs $3 to $5 million to replace it. Then maintenance on a yearly basis is going to be 3% of that. Significant amount of money, right? But it has to be there. So everybody wants to paint it purple, and everybody wants to paint it blue, and everybody wants to come in and buy brand new chairs and put in here and new workout equipment and all the rest of that. Well, those can be future plans, and you can fund those improvements, and you fund them out of small contributions every year to each of those accounts. And hopefully you have the money there when it's time to do it. But maintenance, you cannot forego maintenance. Well, you can, but you pay the price for it. And it's a huge penalty.
All right, Terry, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot now.
I'm on the spot.
What would you...
I'm in the light.
Yes, you are. What would you want residents to have as a takeaway from this brief little interview? Like something just to take back in when they're checking your name on that ballot.
Mm-hmm. Well, I try to live my life very simply. I'm a God-fearing man. I give you my word, I do what I say. That's what people need to be doing these days. If you give your word, do what you say. I like to help people. I think if you ask my neighbors, if they have trouble, I'm always there. I try to make sure we help them out. You never know when you're going to need it, right? I had someone tell me one time, if you want a friend, you have to be a friend. And that's so true. You can't make friends without being a friend. So we try to do that, my wife and I both. We try to be friends to the people around us. We try to help the people around us. Sometimes there's folks you just can't. They don't like you because you part your hair on the right and they part theirs on the left. You got white hair, they got gray hair. I mean, whatever the case, they just don't like it. They look at you and they go, I don't like it. There's nothing you can do about that. You can't help that. But it doesn't mean you still can't be kind to them, right? So I think the thing that I want people to take away from listening to me is I'm a regular guy. I'm not I'm not trying to pretend to be anybody. I got no power trip here. I'm not looking to come in here and tell everybody what to do. I'm not looking to come in here and change everything, turn it upside down on its head. That's not what I'm looking to. I'm concerned about the same things that we talked about. What is the purpose of an HOA? I want to keep the dues reasonable. They can't stay the same. That's a foolish statement. If somebody tells you they're going to keep the dues the same, well, you're going to shut this place down. Because there's no other way. You can't do it, right? You can't, it's impossible. So, but keeping it reasonable, trying to limit as much as possible unforeseen things. And there's no way to foresee this storm, right? No way. You couldn't foresee that. No one knew the top was going to get blown off, right? Nobody knew that. Nobody knew the wind was going to blow that. Just wind, right? Look at some of the severe weather we've had this year. We've really had the triple dose this year. It really has been. So, you can't sit here and foresee all of that. Those are unknown things, but you have to set aside money for that. Make sure you got insurances to cover those kinds of things when they happen. I guess, within my own little sphere of influence, as I like to call it, I'm a very thorough person. When I look at things, I look at it very thoroughly. I make sure I fully understand it. I try to look for what I don't know rather than just what I do know, which is easy to do. Simple route, just look for what you know. That's all you need to worry about. If you get blindsided, you get blindsided. I don't agree with that. I do my best to look through it, be thorough about it, make sure I understand it, ask questions, right? I think if somebody comes in here and they have a problem and they come to me as a board member and they say, I just don't like this, just don't like it. And I want you to bring it to the board. I want you to tell the board what I think about this, right? I'm going to carry that to the board and I'm going to tell them what the person said. I'm not going to say, oh, okay, yeah, I got it. I'll throw away what they said. I'm not going to do that. That's not me. That's not how I operate. I try to be as courteous to people as they'll let me. Some people won't let you, but I try to be.
All right, sir. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking time out of your schedule to come and see me.
Thank you, Stephen.
I hope you had a good time. I know I did.
I did.
All right. Well, you have yourself a great rest of your day, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.